What's up, everybody? Damon here, and we're doing things a little bit differently today on the Daily Fix because of today's unprecedented news that Nintendo is delaying pre-orders of the Nintendo Switch 2 in response to sweeping tariffs announced by the Trump administration. It's also in the wake of serious backlash against the price of the Switch 2 and certain games. So I'm joined by Seth Macy. This is your Daily Fix. Let's jump right in. Okay, Seth and my dear viewers, Nintendo has taken the unprecedented decision to delay Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders here in the US, blaming the impact of Trump's tariffs and, quote, evolving market conditions. So pre-orders were set to go live on April 9th. Nintendo did not share an updated kickoff date, but did promise that the June 5th release date still holds. They have not changed the actual worldwide release date. Nintendo has confirmed this pre-order delay is specific to the US. On the same day that Nintendo held its Nintendo Direct earlier this week, revealing everything about the Switch 2, well, everything except the price of the console and Mario Kart World during the actual Direct, that came out afterwards, and there was immediate backlash against mostly Mario Kart 8, although I think it's worth noting, $450 is by far the most expensive Nintendo hardware ever. So Nintendo was dealing with that. And then that same day, the Trump administration announced a 10% baseline tax on imports from all countries, 34% tax on imports from China, 24% on Japan, and 46% on Vietnam, where Nintendo had shifted a lot of its manufacturing, trying to avoid tariffs in China. So there's already backlash about the price, and then this all happens. Over on their YouTube channel, former Nintendo of America PR manager Kit Ellis said, "I don't want to blow things out of proportion, but it does feel like a true crisis moment for Nintendo." So Seth, I want to bring you in. There are many questions to try to get to here. How much trouble is Nintendo in? Can they still have a successful launch in June? Can they turn sentiment around and actually get people excited about buying a Switch 2 and Mario Kart World? And how might these tariffs affect Nintendo's prices? I have to imagine Nintendo was probably hoping this week would go a little bit differently for them. Don't you think?
I would have to imagine. If you've watched any of the Treehouse live stuff, the chat, which I automatically turn off anyway, is just everyone just saying, lower the price, lower the price. And it's just like spamming. Yeah, drop the price. So people are not happy about that. If you kind of go on in any online space, it's people just mad that Mario Kart World is going to cost $80. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard as much about the price of the console. I haven't heard as much. I haven't heard people as upset about that. But I mean, I predicted $499, but only just to be a troll, and not because I thought it was actually going to be $499.
Well, what do you think? So, how do you feel about $450, which is 50% more than the Switch 1 cost?
That's a good question. Before the Direct, if it had leaked that it was $499, I would be like, well, that's the stupidest thing they've ever done. As soon as they said 4K, I was like, all right. I mean, I could see that. It's got a 1080p, 120 hertz screen. It's not an OLED, but that's still a much better screen than the baseline Steam Deck, which cost $399, has a 1200 by 800 resolution screen that runs at 60 hertz. So like getting 120 hertz handheld is pretty great, actually. I think you have to get like the Asus ROG Ally to get that sort of screen. Actually, that one might be faster than that. People will let me know. But then when it showed like 4K, I was like, okay, it's got DLSS, it's got HDR, it's got VRR, it's got all these R's on it that are great. And I think I didn't feel so bad when they said the price, knowing what it was capable of doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. People aren't as upset about the price of the console, but like I was saying earlier, the first 4 Nintendo home consoles from the NES to the GameCube all launched at $200. The Wii was $250, and then the Wii U and the Switch were $300. So $450 is like so much more expensive than any other Nintendo hardware. And I think this has to be a nightmare situation for Nintendo, because remember, they didn't want to reveal the Switch 2. They dragged their feet for as long as they possibly could, because the Switch was doing so phenomenally well. And they've said outright publicly, matching the success of the Switch 1 is going to be a tall order. So now they reveal it. It's so much more expensive, even if the price is appropriate. The Switch 1 is their best-selling home console ever, Nintendo's. Yep. And you don't reach that level of broad mass market, reach with, or at least it's easier to do with the $300 console than a $450 one. But that's not even addressing Mario Kart World. which is what, it's the most expensive standard edition game released this millennium. There in the 16-bit days, you'd have your occasional game that would be $80 or more, but starting in the early 2000s, the standard was set at $60. Stayed there for 2 decades until they very recently raised it to $70. But Nintendo's going to come out with $80. Yeah, I don't know what that's coming from. What was your reaction when you heard the price of Mario Kart World?
I don't know, because I subscribe to the economic belief of subjective theory of value. So I was kind of glib, like if it seems too expensive, just don't buy it. But then everyone's like, well, they'll never put it on sale. That's not that. Maybe in the Wii era, they never put games on sale.
Yeah, I don't buy that. People always say Nintendo games never go on sale. It's just not true.
No, it's not. And that is literally my job, to track deals and sales. So maybe it's not true.
Maybe they don't go on sale as soon or as often or as deeply discounted as you would like. But Nintendo games are on sale all the time. Yeah.
And ultimately, it does come down to what your personal feeling is. Do you believe that it is worth $80? If you do, then you will buy it. If you don't, you won't buy it. And it sucks, but unfortunately, that's just like the laws of how economics work. Although, I mean, again, it is subjective, but kind of everyone who's previewed it is like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, I understand why this is an $80 game. So the way to do it is to try to get that $4.99 bundle, because then you're only paying $50 for Mario Kart World. But yeah, $80. I mean, that's a lot of money, and I can remember very vividly back in the day when it was the N64 era. I obviously had one, but what drew me to the original PlayStation was, I think I was at Walmart and I was looking at N64 games, and they're like $79, $80, $90, some of them. And then I look over at the CD rack with PlayStation 1 games, and they were like $30. Like, well, that's a no-brainer. So I paid a little bit more for a PlayStation 1 to pay a lot less for the games. So yeah.
So now we find ourselves in this strange position where now pre-orders are up in the air. Don't know when they're going to be available for pre-order. And like, what if now, considering the backlash that's already been, what if they have to raise the price of the console now?
That's going to be a big problem. And I think it's going to be a big problem for everyone, because if, it's not just going to affect, this isn't a Nintendo tariff. This is a tariff against goods manufactured in certain countries. So like you said earlier, the Switch 2, they moved it to Vietnam so that they could get away from China tariffs, and now Vietnam has higher tariffs than China, but still, like the PlayStations are made in China. Most of our electronics are made in China in some form or another. So kind of everything is going to go up, and that's going to be a huge problem for Nintendo trying to launch this. People are already mad about the price of the games, and then to have to pay more than that. You know what it reminds me of is when the 3DS first came out. So the silver lining is we might get 10 NES games given to us for our loyalty if we pay full price. I think it was $249 when the 3DS was first introduced, if I'm not mistaken, and everyone was like, that's entirely too much money to pay. And eventually they did drop it down.
So they dropped the price of 3DS after it was released, right? Like shortly after it was released?
Yeah, it wasn't very long, and then they gave everybody like the early adopter. I'm blanking on the name now, but yes, just a pack of games that I think some of them you can't get anywhere else. I don't see that happening now. Like, they're kind of up against the wall. They don't really have a lot of room here, and if the prices do go up because of tariffs, they can't just cut that off of their margins and hope to pick it up on volume. Like, that's gonna really be a problem for a lot of people. And again, the subjective theory of value comes in. People. You have to make something that people want enough that you can charge a price that you can make money off of. So if it becomes too much and people just don't want to pay that much, then they're gonna lose. It's gonna be a big, huge bummer, because I'm so fired up for this console. I've been waiting for it for like 3 years, that we've had the rumors for it, and they finally show it, and I was freaking out. Bonanza Donkey Kong looks amazing, and then we get the $80 Mario Kart, and then we get like, boom, next day we get this tariff news, and they're delaying pre-orders.
Yeah, it's also a completely different situation than it was going into the Switch 1, because the Wii U had been a big failure. So there wasn't a lot of like mainstream excitement about the Switch. Hardcore gamers and Nintendo fans, we were there day one, but it took word of mouth to spread to really reach broad mainstream appeal for the Switch over a few years. And of course, it's phenomenally successful. So then going into the Switch 2, there would be a lot of just general interest and excitement about it. But I think, people who bought a Switch for $300, I think they would probably get sticker shock when they see how much it would cost to get into the ecosystem of the Switch 2, especially with how much, Mario Kart World costs. And then now on top of that, now it's totally unclear if it's even going to be that price or if it's even going to be more expensive. So like I said, I think this is a really tough situation for Nintendo to be in. No one can ever predict what Nintendo's going to do, but if you had to guess, Seth, like what's going on? When are we going to hear back from Nintendo? What's like a possible scenario with how this plays out?
Oh my God! I mean, there are some meetings happening. Probably not right now. I think it's quite late in Kyoto, but there's some talks right now. I think I think they're going to listen. The very cynical part of me wonders, like, are they kind of using the tariff as an excuse to pull back a little bit, assess where they're at, and then come back with a price that actually isn't affected? It's just like, well,
that's exactly what I wanted to bring up. Yep.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking that might be the case. But yeah, I'm hoping sooner rather than later, because I was really excited to pre-order on April 9th.
I mean, I was going to also.
Yeah. So I think there's some serious talks going on right now, and I think there's probably some hurt feelings at Nintendo headquarters, and I think there's probably a feeling like this was the follow-up to their biggest home console ever. This is the follow-up to, I think, it beat the PlayStation 2 in terms of like total sales. So this is like
it's like right behind it.
Okay, well, they're neck and neck, but like that's still an astonishing number of video game consoles. And then to follow it up and kind of stumble out of the gate, it's not. I don't think it's quite as bad as when the Xbox One was released or was announced, and they packed in the Kinect, and I think that ruined all of their momentum that they had from the Xbox 360 era. But I do think that this is going to be a little bit hard. It's going to take them some time to recover. But again, they're also like 139 years old, so they've done some recovering in their time. That's
true. Well, it is strange times, challenging times for everyone, in Nintendo in particular right now. But viewers, we now hand the conversation over to you in the comments. Can Nintendo turn this thing around? Most importantly, I would like to know if you are planning on pre-ordering a Switch 2, will you still do so if Nintendo raises the prices even higher? Inquiring minds want to know. Seth, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me.
Likewise.
Viewers, thank you for joining us in this very special emergency edition of the Daily Fix. Everyone have great weekends, and we'll be back to talk much more about Switch 2, I'm sure, next week.